Joining me now, once again, is Mark Reichel and Niall Stanage to comment on some of the things you just heard. Gentlemen, I just heard Mr. Trump talk about also how he wants to make sure that the 2024 election is not rigged like the 2020 was, and that he's being attacked because he dared to challenge the results of that election. Mark, I'm going to jump right in there and just start with you on that one there. Is Mr. Trump walking precariously close to violating what he said he would not do, which is speak in this way?
Yeah, he's fine. Actually, he's on the side he wants to stay on. He'll always walk really close. I think he's going to cross the line at some point. He just can't retaliate against witnesses. He can't influence witnesses, and he can't discuss the facts with witnesses. He's defending himself in the press right now. I don't think there's anything you can stop that. He just cannot influence witnesses or jurors or retaliate against them. I think saying you're innocent is probably something he's going to be able to do throughout the pendency of the case. If they tighten up the restrictions, that's going to be a little tougher for him. But on the same time, right now with what he's saying is fine. What he said earlier, what Niall pointed out, what he spoke about Vice President Pence is really close to the line, probably over the line.
Niall, yeah, talk to me about that, Niall. You felt like that the comments towards Mr. Pence were almost a bridge too far?
Well, the issue is that the legal world and the political world are tangled up so closely in this most recent indictment of the former president. He is part of his terms set at his initial hearing was that he wouldn't interfere or otherwise, meddle with potential witnesses. Now, he then comes and attacks former Vice President Pence in very colourful, vigorous terms, as is his propensity. That could be seen as trying to intimidate a witness. It could also be seen as one candidate for the 2024 Republican nomination attacking another candidate for the Republican nomination. So which of those options takes precedence? There is a legal danger there for the former president.
Now, we also heard the former president talk about how, once again, the 2020 election was stolen, and he wants to make sure that does not happen in 2024. He's speaking to the crowd of supporters there, and he talked about Mr. Biden being both incompetent and corrupt, and saying that Mr. Biden has weaponized his Justice Department to come after him every time he tries to speak out against that rigged election. Another set of indictments come down. Is this a winning strategy, Niall?
Before we get to the strategic point, Nick, I think it behoves us as journalists to say, when the former president describes the 2020 election as rigged, that is false. That is something that was litigated in numerous court cases, and the Trump campaign and its allies lost all but one case, and the one case they won was minor. The indictment that was just released this week has abundant evidence of allies of then President Trump telling him those claims were nonsense. Now, does it work strategically? Clearly it does, because he's leading the Republican field by, as we were saying earlier, 35 to 40 points. But he's factually wrong.
Well, Niall, Mark, I know that we'll continue to watch this, and I'm sure that Mr. Trump will continue to give us plenty with which to work from. Thank you both, gentlemen.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.